This is Biology 2, Chapter 24 on Intro to Animals. In this portion of the video lecture, we will be talking about lots of general types of animal characteristics. When we talk about animals or the animal kingdom, the only thing that all animals have in common is the fact that they are eukaryotic, so they have a nucleus in their cells, and they're multicellular, so they're made up of more than one cell. The oldest animal, the most ancestral, ancient, primitive animal, believe it or not, is the sponge. The sea sponge looks like a plant, and in fact was miscategorized for many years because it looked like a plant, but it actually is an association of tiny little animals living together. Other ancestral animals are things like the euglena, which is the middle photo there. It is an aquatic animal. It is a heterotrophic, so it does eat things. And then we have the rotifer on the very way right. That is a little filter feeder and takes care of animals or bacteria that are tinier than itself. Early animal groups had to develop a lot of adaptations from this eukaryotic and multicellular way of life. As you know, we have many different types of animals all over the planet, so lots of adaptations. So for example, gills for fish to be able to take oxygen out of the water, wings for birds to fly, opposable thumbs for primates like ourselves to be able to grasp things. Those adaptations had to form in structure. To function in numerous different types of habitats. So general ways that animals feed themselves and digest their food. There's lots of different ways that animals have developed to ingest and digest food. Their mouth can tell you a lot about how an animal finds its food and eats its food and captures its prey. So the structure and the form of the mouth parts can really determine how the mouth functions. For example, the mosquito on the very left, their mouth is kind of structured as a long tube-like appendage, so they can use it sort of like a hypodermic needle to get the blood nutrients from whatever animal they happen to be taking it from. The middle picture there is what's called a lamprey eel. It is an animal without jaws. So it just has a circular mouth there that you see with a bunch of kind of tooth-like projections that are very similar to the material that's made out of your fingernails and your hair. And then it's got kind of a rasping tongue that you see there in the middle. So lampreys don't chew their food. They kind of bore and drill into their food, and then they take nutrients that way. And then the snake on the very right, snakes have adapted their mouths to be able to eat prey items that are much bigger than their own head, seeing as that they don't have appendages to capture and grasp prey to put them into their mouths. So they can unhinge each side of their jaw to accommodate prey items that are bigger than their own head. Support as far as a skeletal system. There are two general groups of animals. We have the invertebrates with no backbone. Invertebrates would be some examples of invertebrates with no backbone would be things like jellyfish, and octopus. Some invertebrates have exoskeletons or a hard outer skeleton. Remember, exo means outside. So exoskeletons give kind of a framework of support for tissues. And it also helps protect the soft, squishy inner parts on the inside of the animal since they don't have any bones on the inside. So things with exoskeletons would be like your insects and your arthropods and your clams and mollusks and the like. Vertebrate animals, of course, have a backbone. So that's an internal skeleton with an endoskeleton. So endoskeletons provide a place for muscles to pull against for support. And they also help protect internal organs. You have your skull, for example, to protect your nice, squishy, soft brain. You have a rib cage to protect your heart and your lungs. And your pelvic cavity helps protect the lower portions of the body. Animal movement. Animals had to evolve complex ways to move because they live in a lot of different habitats. We have mammals that are swimmers and runners and jumpers and flyers. So complex muscle tissues needed to occur. So that allows for more movement in complex and faster ways. Animal reproduction. All animal reproduction, of course, is sexual reproduction. So we begin at the very early stages of reproduction with the zygote, where one sperm meets egg and we have a fertilized egg cell. There's two different ways that we can form a zygote for animals. One is what's called external fertilization. Sometimes it's called spawning. This is where sperm and egg combine outside of the body. This requires an aquatic environment. Both sperm and egg can't dry out because once they do, they're no longer viable for reproduction. External fertilizers or spawners would be things like fish and amphibians because they need that aquatic environment. Many external fertilizers are not parents. Once they lay their genetic material, they go off on their way to perhaps do that again someday. They don't parent very often. So external fertilizers tend to be those overproducers that we've talked about in previous units. They have many more offspring that can possibly survive in hopes that a few do make it. Otherwise, a more guaranteed way of fertilization to occur and for offspring to be raised is internal fertilization. So this is where sperm and egg combine inside of the body. So in order to do that, we have to develop a reproductive tract in both sexes in order to transport sperm to egg and to be able to house the developing offspring. So very early development of all animals. After the zygote starts to undergo mitosis and starts to copy its cells, it forms kind of a ball of cells. It's hollow in the middle, and we call that a blastula. It's a fluid-filled ball of cells. These cells have no specialization. They are just cells reproducing. They haven't been assigned a job yet. So the blastula continues to divide and forms what we call a gastrula. A gastrula is a two-layer sac with an opening at one end. And depending what type of animal you are, that first opening will either be the mouth or the anus. And you will find out which ones human beings are once you view some videos and do a little bit of assignment work. So gastrula comes from like your gastrointestinal system, like a little stomach. That's what gastrula means, is little stomach. So you can see there in the photo, it's developing that inner tube. So from the whole thing, kind of from start to finish on early development, sperm meets egg, fertilization occurs. We start to undergo mitosis. That zygote divides. The blastula, again, is just a hollow-filled ball of cells. And the gastrula is where we start to make that inner tube. The cells that are in the tube, as opposed to the outside, are different. So there is cell specialization and tissue development in animals. So the endoderm of the gastrula becomes the inner layer of cells. Eventually, the endoderm tissue cells will become parts of the digestive system. The ectoderm is the outer layer of cells in that gastrula, and those cells will eventually be assigned to be part of the integumentary or skin system or the nervous system. And then finally, the middle layer of tissue is called the mesoderm. And this is between the inside, or the endoderm, and the outside, or the ectoderm, of the gastrula. And the middle layer of cells becomes muscle, circulatory, and respiratory system cells. So here we have kind of the three layers shown. Again, the endoderm becomes digestive organs. The mesoderm becomes muscles, circulatory, respiratory. And then the ectoderm becomes nervous tissue and skin. This has been part 1 of Chapter 24 on Intro to Animals.